The security footage from the Burj Al Arab shows her walking into the elevator at 11:43 p.m. She never walked out. When housekeeping found Priya Sharma's body the next morning in the luxury suite's marble bathroom, her British husband told police she must have slipped and hit her head. But here's what James Wilson didn't know. Dubai's surveillance system had captured everything. The parking garage cameras catching him disposing of her bloodied sari in a dumpster behind the hotel. And most damning of all, a recording from their suite that captured Priya's final words. "I'm calling my family in Mumbai. This marriage is over." The elevator footage showing him dragging something heavy in a hotel laundry cart at 2 a.m. What happened next was so calculated, so cold-blooded, that even Dubai's seasoned investigators, who've seen everything from international drug cartels to billion-dollar fraud, called it one of the most chilling murders AD ever encountered. I'm your host, and if you're new here, we dive deep into cases that most people never hear about. Before we uncover this nightmare that unfolded in the heart of Dubai, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell, because what I am about to tell you will change how you see the glittering facade of this desert paradise forever. Plane tickets for her parents to visit London, all paid for without her asking. He never pressured her for intimate photos or video calls at inappropriate times like other men had. Gold jewelry for her mother, a Rolex for her father, and for Priya's younger sister studying engineering, a full scholarship to a university in Canada. But Priya wasn't naive. She'd been burned before by men who promised the world and delivered nothing. He's offering you a life we could never give you. In Dubai, women need to be careful. I've seen what happens to girls who attract the wrong attention. The way James's jaw tightened when the waiter took too long with their order. How he corrected Priya's English pronunciation in front of her family. The night he made her delete Instagram because other men were commenting on your photos. In a city where millionaires disappear fortunes overnight and secrets are buried deeper than oil wells, James Wilson thought he could commit the perfect crime. He was wrong. Welcome back to the channel that brings you the darkest true crime stories from around the world. For Priya Sharma, a 26-year-old software engineer from Mumbai, it started with a message on an international dating app. Dubai 2023, the city of impossible dreams where anything can be bought, including love. Hi beautiful, I'm James Wilson, British expat living in Dubai, CEO of my own import business. I'm looking for someone genuine, someone who values family and tradition. The photos showed a handsome 34-year-old man standing next to a white Lamborghini, luxury apartment views of the Burj Khalifa gleaming behind him. What made James different was his patience. 6 months of daily video calls. Flowers sent to her office in Mumbai. When James flew to Mumbai to meet her parents, he arrived with gifts worth more than her father's annual salary as a teacher. "This man loves you," her mother whispered, as James charmed her father in broken Hindi over dinner. But there were signs. Small ones. "I'm just protective," he said, pulling her close. The way James's jaw tightened when the waiter took too long with their order. How he corrected Priya's English pronunciation in front of her family. The night he made her delete Instagram because other men were commenting on your photos. "I'm just protective," he said, pulling her close. In Dubai, women need to be careful. I've seen what happens to girls who attract the wrong attention. 3 months later, they were married in a lavish ceremony at the Burj Al Arab. Priya wore a sari that cost more than her father's car. The guest list included British expats, wealthy emeritus, and international businessmen James claimed as partners. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Persian Gulf. An infinity pool on the 40th floor. Staff who bowed when they saw her coming. "I make enough for both of us. Besides, women in Dubai... It's complicated. There are cultural sensitivities." What Priya didn't know was that not one of those business partners had ever heard of James Wilson. Her days blended into a routine of gym sessions, shopping trips, and long afternoons staring at the Gulf while James was at work. The Dubai Marina apartment was everything James had promised. His money came from somewhere else, somewhere he never explained, and somewhere that required meetings at strange hours with men who spoke in whispers. But paradise has a way of becoming a prison when you can't leave. Planning to go somewhere? "You don't need to work," James told her when she asked about job applications. Priya had laughed too loudly at something her sister said, and James accused her of making him look like a fool in front of the neighbors. Screenshots of his bank statements left carelessly open on his laptop. Audio recordings of his mysterious phone calls. Photos of the bruises. If people think I can't control my wife, my reputation is ruined. My business suffers. Our lifestyle suffers. James Wilson wasn't importing goods. He was laundering money for a network of British criminals using Dubai's financial system. The luxury lifestyle, the expensive gifts, even their wedding, all of it was funded by dirty money. Priya's engineering degree, her pride and joy, became a decoration on the wall. Except James wasn't at work. The import business was a fiction. When Priya tried to access their joint bank account, she discovered her name wasn't on it. When she attempted to renew her Indian passport, she found James had taken it for safekeeping and couldn't remember where he'd put it. "Why do you need it?" he asked, and for the first time Priya saw something cold behind his eyes. The first time he hit her was over a phone call to her sister. "In Dubai, respect is everything," he said as she held her stinging cheek. But what James didn't know was that Priya had been documenting everything. And most importantly, she'd been learning Arabic from their housekeeper, Fatima, who had become more than an employee. She'd become Priya's lifeline to the outside world. By winter 2023, Priya had uncovered the truth about her husband's business. James Wilson wasn't importing goods. He was laundering money for a network of British criminals using Dubai's financial system. The luxury lifestyle, the expensive gifts, even their wedding, all of it was funded by dirty money. The plan was simple. Document everything, transfer evidence to a secure location, and disappear while James was on one of his mysterious business trips. Through Fatima, Priya had contacted a lawyer who specialized in helping expatriate women escape abusive marriages. Changed the locks so she needed his key card to leave the apartment. Started working from home more often. But James was growing suspicious. He'd installed tracking software on her phone. "I love you too much to let anything happen to you," he said, but his eyes said something different. The breaking point came on December 15th. Priya's sister called with devastating news. Their father had suffered a heart attack and was in critical condition in a Mumbai hospital. "I need to go home," Priya begged through tears. "He might die. We'll send money for the best doctors." She contacted her sister through an encrypted messaging app and told her everything. The abuse, the money laundering, the evidence she'd collected. "You can video call him, but you're not leaving Dubai." James's response was cold calculation. That night, while James slept, Priya made a decision that would seal her fate. The penthouse suite, champagne, room service. Just like our honeymoon. Her evidence was hidden in places James would never think to look. If she was going to escape, she needed to buy time. "If something happens to me, you'll know who did it." James charming and attentive. Priya beautiful, but clearly tense. The elevator operator later told police that the couple seemed, "I'm going to the British consulate tomorrow," she typed. But James was already awake. He'd been watching her from the doorway for 10 minutes, reading every word over her shoulder. He asked, and Priya knew her time had run out. "Going somewhere, darling?" December 16th, 2023. The day that would end with Priya Sharma's death began with James Wilson making a phone call that would later prove his undoing. "I need to move the timeline up," he told someone on an encrypted line, not knowing that Dubai's intelligence services were already monitoring his communications as part of a larger money laundering investigation. At 9 a.m., James did something he'd never done before. He suggested they have breakfast at the Burj Al Arab. "We never spend time together anymore," he said, his tone loving, almost apologetic. "Let me make it up to you." Priya knew it was a trap, but she also knew she had no choice. Her passport was still missing. The Burj Al Arab's penthouse suite costs $24,000 per night. James paid in cash. Security footage shows them arriving at 11 a.m. Normal. James had his arm around Priya's waist. She was smiling, though her eyes looked scared. And James Wilson's own words, because he made one crucial mistake. What happened in that suite over the next 12 hours can only be pieced together from audio recordings. Forensic evidence. He forgot that in Dubai's most exclusive hotel, everything is recorded. What most guests don't know is that the system has a backup recording feature for security purposes. The audio system in the Burj Al Arab as penthouse suites is supposed to be for ambiance, gentle music, nature sounds, customized playlists for VIP guests. James Wilson didn't know this either. At 2:47 p.m., the audio captured what investigators later described as the most chilling conversation they'd ever heard in a domestic violence case. "I know about the money," Priya's voice barely above a whisper. "What money?" James, casual, almost amused. "The criminals in London." Then James's voice, completely different now, cold, calculating. "The fake business. And to someone else. If anything happens to me, I know everything. The laundering. You're my wife. In Dubai, wives don't betray their husbands. And what do you plan to do with this information?" James systematically broke down every escape plan Priya had made, every person she'd contacted, every piece of evidence she'd collected. "I already sent it to my sister. Nothing's going to happen to you, darling." Security logs show James Wilson's ASCII card was used to access the elevator maintenance controls, something that should have been impossible for a guest. What followed was 3 hours of psychological torture that the investigating officers still refused to discuss in detail. Through his money laundering contacts, he'd gained access to hotel blueprints, security protocols, and maintenance schedules. He knew exactly when the elevator would be empty, which cameras had blind spots, and how to make a murder look like an accident. "You think you can outplay me, but I've been planning this since the day I married you. The life insurance policy I took out in Mumbai. The will I had you sign. Do you even remember what was in it? The medical records showing your depression and suicidal thoughts that I've been documenting with Dr. Al-Rashid." But the most damning moment came at 6:23 p.m. "You know what your problem is, Priya. You think you're smart. You're insane. I'm practical. In 6 months, when the grief is past, I'll marry someone else, someone who knows how to be grateful." At 7:45 p.m., room service delivered dinner. The waiter later testified that James answered the door alone, explaining that his wife was resting and shouldn't be disturbed. At 11:43 p.m., security footage shows Priya walking to the elevator alone, wearing a hotel bathrobe, her hair disheveled, bruises visible on her arms. She never made it to the ground floor. At 11:44 p.m., the elevator stopped between floors 45 and 46, but James had been preparing for this moment for months. Through his money laundering contacts, he'd gained access to hotel blueprints, security protocols, and maintenance schedules. He knew exactly when the elevator would be empty, which cameras had blind spots, and how to make a murder look like an accident. James's keycard shows him returning to the penthouse suite. At 11:52 p.m., the elevator resumed normal operation. At 2:17 a.m., security footage captures James wheeling a hotel laundry cart through the service corridors, areas guests aren't supposed to access, but his stolen maintenance credentials opened every door. At 2:34 a.m., parking garage cameras show James loading something heavy into a rental car he'd secretly leased under a false identity. At 3:15 a.m., traffic cameras catch the same rental car at a construction site in Dubai's outskirts, a site where James's money laundering network had connections. The scene was carefully staged. She appeared to have slipped getting out of the shower, hit her head on the marble edge, and drowned in an inch of water. At 6 a.m., James calls hotel security in a panic. "My wife? I can't find her. I think something's happened." The search began immediately. Dubai doesn't take missing persons lightly, especially when they're foreign nationals in the city's most prestigious hotel. At 8:30 a.m., housekeeping found Priya's body in the penthouse suite's marble bathroom. But he didn't know about the backup audio system that had captured every word of their final confrontation. But James had made 3 fatal mistakes. The angle of the head wound suggested she'd been struck with something heavy, something that matched the dimensions of the suite's marble bookend, which had been cleaned, but still showed microscopic traces of blood and hair. 1. The audio recordings. His browser history read like a murder instruction manual. James had destroyed Priya's phone, wiped his own communications, and even corrupted the suite's main surveillance system. When Dubai police played back James's own voice confessing to planning Priya's murder, his lawyer immediately stopped the interview. 2. The forensic evidence. James had researched how to stage an accidental drowning, but his internet searches were all on devices connected to networks that Dubai Cybercrime Unit monitors for money laundering investigations. How long does it take to drown in shallow water, staging bathroom accidents? Dubai Police Investigation Procedures Inheritance Laws UA versus India. But the physical evidence was even more damning. Priya's injuries weren't consistent with the fall. The angle of the head wound suggested she'd been struck with something heavy, something that matched the dimensions of the sweet as marble bookend, which had been cleaned but still showed microscopic traces of blood and hair. 3. The money trail. James thought he'd been clever, using dirty money to fund their lifestyle, believing it would be harder to trace. But Dubai's Financial Intelligence Unit had been tracking his money laundering network for over a year. They had records of every transaction, every fake invoice, every illegal transfer. More importantly, they had records of the $2 million life insurance policy James had taken out on Priya in Mumbai, a policy that required her death to appear accidental to pay out. Dubai's police don't mess around when it comes to international criminals using their city as a base of operations. The investigation that James thought would take weeks was completed in 72 hours. The footage shows a man who thought he was untouchable being led away in handcuffs from the same hotel where he'd murdered his wife 3 days earlier. James Wilson's arrest on December 19, 2023, was captured by Dubai's news media and broadcast around the world. Dubai's prosecutor wasn't just charging James with murder. They were charging him with being part of an international criminal organization, money laundering, fraud, and conspiracy. They even suggested she'd been planning to expose him and had killed herself to frame him for murder. But the arrest was just the beginning. We will not allow our city to be used as a playground for criminals who think they can exploit our hospitality to commit heinous acts. This case represents everything Dubai stands against, announced Chief Prosecutor Hassan al-Mahmoud at a press conference that made international headlines. The evidence against James was overwhelming, but his defense team, paid for with laundered money, had one strategy: blame the victim. I want everyone to know that I was not depressed. I was not suicidal. I was terrified. I tried to leave. I tried to get help. But James controlled everything. My money, my passport, my freedom. They claimed Priya was suicidal, that she'd discovered James's criminal activities and killed herself out of shame. It was a desperate strategy, and it backfired spectacularly. For 6 months, Priya had been documenting everything: photos of bruises, audio recordings of threats, screenshots of bank statements, video messages explaining her fears. Mira Sharma flew from Mumbai to Dubai, carrying something that would destroy James' defense completely: her sister's insurance policy. Not the life insurance policy James had secretly taken out, Priya's own insurance policy against her husband. But most damning of all was a 20-minute recording Priya had made the night before her death. If you're watching this, I'm probably dead, and James probably killed me. The recording went on to detail James's money laundering operation, his connections to British criminals, and his specific threats about what would happen if she tried to expose him. He told me he'd done this before. In London, before he came to Dubai, a girlfriend who overdosed when she threatened to leave him. The police never investigated because James made sure there was just enough drugs in her system to make it look like an accident. When this recording was played in court, James's defense team requested an immediate recess. They knew their client was finished. As James's murder trial proceeded, Dubai's Financial Crimes Unit was dismantling the entire criminal network he'd been part of. The investigation revealed a sophisticated operation that had laundered over $50 million through Dubai's real estate and luxury goods markets. James wasn't the mastermind, he was a middle manager. But he was the most visible, the most careless, and now the most trapped. Even the Dubai expat community that had once welcomed him now pretended they'd never met him. His British criminal associates abandoned him immediately. The expensive legal team disappeared when their payments stopped. Mr. Wilson created fake medical records using my name and clinic letterhead. He somehow gained access to our administrative systems and created an entire fictional treatment history. But the most devastating testimony came from Dr. Sarah Al-Rashid, The psychiatrist James claimed had been treating Priya for depression and suicidal thoughts. "I never treated Mrs. Wilson," Dr. Al-Rashid testified. "I never even met her." The prosecution then revealed that James had been planning Priya's murder for over 8 months. He'd researched her background, her family's financial situation, her visa status, and her legal options. Dubai's courts aren't known for their leniency toward foreign criminals, especially those who commit violent crimes against women. He'd identified her as the perfect victim, isolated, dependent, and desperate. He targeted a vulnerable young woman, isolated her from her support system, and murdered her when she threatened to expose his criminal activities. This court sentences James Wilson to death with the recommendation that this sentence be carried out swiftly. The trial of James Wilson lasted 6 weeks and attracted international media attention. He was a cornered animal, screaming threats at the judge, the prosecutor, and even Priya's family, who had traveled from Mumbai to witness justice. "I gave her a life she never could have had." The evidence was so overwhelming that James says lawyers advised him to plead guilty in exchange for life imprisonment instead of the death penalty. James refused. "I'm innocent," he maintained, even as audio recordings of his confession played in court. Priya was unstable. "She killed herself to frame me." Even his own lawyers looked disgusted. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts: first-degree murder, money laundering, fraud, conspiracy, and criminal organization membership. The judge's sentencing statement was broadcast live across Dubai's media networks. "James Wilson came to our country and exploited our openness, our prosperity, and our legal system to commit unspeakable crimes." James's reaction was captured by court cameras. For the first time since his arrest, the mask slipped. He wasn't the charming British businessman anymore. "You don't understand," he shouted as security restrained him. "She was nothing. She was just a village girl who got lucky." Those words sealed his fate. Even his own lawyers looked disgusted. James Wilson's execution by firing squad on August 15, 2024, made headlines around the world. But Priya Sharma's murder had consequences that extended far beyond one man's death. The British criminals in James's network were arrested by Scotland Yard in coordinated raids across London. The money laundering operation was completely dismantled, with over $200 million in assets seized. Dubai implemented new regulations for international dating services and marriage agencies operating in the UAE background. Checks became mandatory for all expatriate spouses, with particular attention to financial crimes and domestic violence histories. The Priya Sharma Protection Act requires mandatory counseling, independent legal representation, and safe house access for all international marriage visa applicants. Priya's sister Mira started a foundation that has helped over 300 women escape abusive international marriages. Most importantly, Priya's story inspired legislation in both Dubai and India to protect mail-order brides and expatriate women from abusive marriages. She was brave enough to document everything, even knowing it might cost her life. Her evidence didn't just convict her killer, it saved other women. Even facing death, she had the courage to document her abuse, to plan her escape, and to leave behind evidence that would ensure her killer faced justice. The National Domestic Violence Hotline, ICE 1-800-799-7233. The Priya Sharma Foundation can be reached at their website. You are not alone, and you are not powerless. Priya's story deserves to be heard, and her courage deserves to be remembered. But perhaps the most significant impact was on other women trapped in similar situations. I'm covering a case from Singapore that involves cryptocurrency, international espionage, and a murder that took 3 years to solve. For some, that's true. But as James Wilson learned too late, Dubai is also a place where justice is swift, thorough, and absolute. My sister's death wasn't meaningless if it prevents other women from suffering the same fate, Mira said at the Foundation's first anniversary. James Wilson thought he could commit the perfect crime in a perfect city. He believed that money, connections, and careful planning would let him get away with murder. He was wrong. But this case isn't really about James Wilson. It's about Priya Sharma, a brilliant young woman who refused to be silently victimized. Dubai's gleaming towers and luxury hotels can make it seem like a place where anything is possible, where anyone can reinvent themselves. If you're in an abusive relationship, international or otherwise, please know that help is available. If this case impacted you the way it impacted me, please hit that like button and share this video. Subscribe for more international true crime cases that you won't hear anywhere else. And hit that notification bell because next week, thank you for watching. And remember, justice may be delayed, but it's never denied. Until next time.